Aloha everyone, we're going to start. My name is Anji. Welcome to the Hawaii Department of Transportation's 2024 Protect Our Water Conference. I'll be your moderator for this morning's session titled Inspection on HDOT Highway Construction Projects, semi-live. At the end of the presentation, the speakers will have a few minutes to answer your questions. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speakers for this session. Anji Macadangdang has been a construction inspector for 15 years and has been employed with Bowser Kubota for 7.5 years. She is the Department of Transportation Highways Division's independent inspector for contract construction projects on Oahu. In her free time, she enjoys traveling, watching UH football, and spoiling her grandchildren. Keala Benavides is a construction inspector for Bowser Kubota as well. His current work includes stormwater BMP inspections as an HDOT contracted third-party inspector for both public and private construction projects on Maui. In his spare time, he enjoys paddling, spearfishing, and other ocean recreation activities. As such, he recognizes the importance of keeping pollutants out of our local aquatic environment. Please help me in welcoming Anji Macadangdang and Keala Benavides. Good morning, Anji.
Hello, how's it? Like I said, my name is Keala Benavides. I'm from Maui. I do the DOT inspections. So this video that we're going to show is going to cover 3 parts: inspection 101, pre-inspection checklist, and BPs currently being used on projects here on Oahu and Maui. So the inspection 101 section will focus on frequency of inspections, types of deficiencies, corrective action requirements, and available resources. The pre-inspection checklist will cover the SWAMP, the SSBB plan, templates. So pretty much what we look for during an inspection. And the last part will show just the projects that we have and what we look for on the inspection. Any questions that you can answer?
Today's presentation is titled Inspection on HDOT Highway Construction Projects and will focus on the Hawaii Department of Transportation Highways Construction Site Runoff Control Programs on the islands of Oahu and Maui. The purpose of the programs is to maintain compliance with NPDES permit requirements set by the Department of Health to implement a construction site management program to reduce, to the maximum extent practicable, the discharge of pollutants from both private and public construction projects, implemented within or encroaching on the DOT right-of-way. All HDOT staff, designers, contractors, construction managers, and consultants must be aware of the environmental requirements and incorporate the appropriate best management practices or BMPs into their design to mitigate pollutants from exiting the project site and entering the state municipal separate storm sewer system or open water body. The training topics that will be discussed today include: Number 1, Independent Inspection 101, where we will cover permit requirements for independent inspections and how inspectors categorize deficiencies identified out on the construction sites. Number 2, Pre-inspection Checklist, where we will explain how the HDOT third-party inspectors prepare for initial inspections and inspect active construction projects. And number 3, HDOT independent inspectors will show you common BMP devices currently being used on active DOT highway construction projects. Prior to the initiation of ground-disturbing activities at any site, except for activities associated with the installation of BMPs at a site, an engineer or qualified inspector employed or retained by the permittee who reviews and becomes familiar with the project's site-specific BMP plan and other equivalent documents shall inspect the site to verify BMP devices have been installed correctly and in the correct locations prior to the commencement of ground-disturbing activities. NPDES general permits require the permittee, at a minimum, to have a qualified inspector inspect a project at least once every 7 calendar days or once every 14 calendar days. and within 24 hours of the occurrence of a storm event that produces 0.25 inches or more of rain. Inspections are only required to be performed during the project's normal working hours. For portions of the site that discharge to an impaired water body, the permittee shall conduct an inspection once every 7 calendar days and within 24 hours of the occurrence of a storm event that produces 0.25 inches or more of rain within a 24-hour period. In addition to inspections required by the NPDES permit program, all public construction projects shall be inspected at least monthly by a qualified construction inspector who is independent of the construction projects to be inspected. The permittee may use more than one qualified construction inspector for these inspections. Upon 3 successive monthly inspections that indicate, in total, no critical or major deficiencies or less than 6 minor deficiencies with no more than 3 minor deficiencies in 1 month in a project's BMP inspection or other stormwater management activities, the permittee may decrease the inspection frequency to quarterly. However, if while under a quarterly inspection frequency, an inspection of a project conducted pursuant to this paragraph indicates at least 1 critical or major deficiency or a total of 3 or more minor deficiencies in the project's BMP or other stormwater management activities, the inspection's frequency shall immediately return to no less than monthly. Types of deficiencies used by the project's independent inspector are defined in the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan. The deficiency levels are critical, majors, and minors. Critical deficiencies are deficiencies that pose an immediate threat for the discharge of pollutants to the storm drain system, surface water, or state waters. These deficiencies should be corrected or addressed before the close of business, on the day of the inspection in which the deficiency is identified. Notification to DOH should be made as soon as possible, and action taken to correct the issue. Major deficiencies are those deficiencies that are significant problems, which could result in the discharge of pollutants to the storm drain system, surface waters, or state waters. Minor deficiencies are those deficiencies that do not pose a threat for discharge of untreated stormwater or pollutants to the storm drain system, surface waters, or state waters, but are not in strict conformance with the SWIP or BMP plan. Corrective action timeframes for major and minor deficiencies differ between Maui and Oahu projects. Independent inspectors on Maui construction projects give the corrective action timeframe of 7 calendar days to correct major deficiencies and 10 calendar days to correct minor deficiencies. This differs from inspectors on Oahu construction projects, who require contractors to correct major and minor deficiencies within 5 calendar days after the inspection has been conducted. There are various resources available for project engineers, inspectors, and contractors to assist you in developing site-specific BMP plans and learning about the various erosion and sediment control devices available. To get more information about the Stormwater Management Pollution Prevention Program or obtain a copy of the Construction BMP Field Manual, visit stormwaterhawaii.com or stormwatermaui.com. On the Designers and Contractors page of Stormwater Hawaii is the Construction BMP Resources icon. When clicked, will take you to the DOT Construction BMP website. Here you will find a digitized copy of the Construction BMP Field Manual, which provides additional photo examples of good and bad BMP devices, as well as clips from past conference presentations, providing an in-depth explanation of various best management practices. The BMP Field Manual is intended for use by DOT highway staff involved in public and private construction projects, and consultants or contractors involved in projects which require work within DOT highways rights-of-way, or projects which connect or discharge to DOT highways MS4. The purpose of the BMP Manual is to provide guidance on installation and maintenance procedures for construction activities on DOT highway construction projects. Implementation of these BMP controls are intended to prevent or reduce the discharge of pollutants to the Hawaii Department of Transportation MS4 and storm drainage systems, including surface waters, thereby protecting state waters from pollutant discharges. For those who are tasked with developing a project's BMP plan, Table 1 in the Construction BMP Field Manual titled Overview of Stormwater BMP for Construction Operations is a helpful tool to provide designers with a general list of BMP devices commonly used based on the specific construction operation. There are two types of BMP plan templates used on DOT highway contract construction projects. The plan used for permitted projects, or projects issued an NPDES permit, due to an acre or more, must produce an HDOT-approved stormwater pollution prevention plan before earth-disturbing activities begin. The version you should be using is dated April 11, 2019. If the project is not issued an NPDES permit because the total disturbed area is less than 1 acre, the site-specific BMP plan dated November 1, 2022. The site-specific BMP plan is a slimmed-down version of the SWIP and is commonly used on resurfacing projects and projects with smaller overall footprints, as the intent of the plan was to expedite the plan development phase for projects with a smaller potential to pollute or discharge into the MS4. Copies of these plans can be found on www.stormwaterhawaii.com or www.stormwatermaui.com. When reviewing the SWIP prior to conducting the initial inspection, there are certain things I look for. These things consist of checking if all required permits and certifications are obtained, verifying the project boundaries and total amount of disturbed area. Look at the drainage map to identify outfalls and discharge points. Reviewing the erosion and sediment control plan and proposed staging areas, and verify the plan has a copy of a completed solid waste disclosure form. Drainage maps are important to review, as they provide information on where the discharge points are located on the projects and the receiving water bodies of the discharge. These points on the project are high-priority areas to inspect to ensure there are no pollutants exiting the project and entering drainage systems or state waters. It is also valuable information to know the direction of flow to ensure proper BMP devices are installed and maintained, especially in those high-flow areas that tend to accumulate the majority of the sediment and debris from the roadways. Additional inlet protection may be needed beyond the project limits depending on flow direction and the orientation of the road. Phasing BMP installation is a highly valuable tool that is commonly used on DOT construction projects to minimize the duration of exposed soil. Contractors may phase by site or section of the project, but it must be spelled out in the SWIP. Something to keep in mind is that once a BMP device is installed on site, it must be maintained and inspected regularly. Properly phasing installation of BMP devices with construction phases has the potential to save you a lot of time and money. It is also recommended to include removal of BMPs written into your plan to save you from having to go through the process of getting an amendment. When developing the SWIP, the contractor should think about where they want to set up their staging areas. Staging areas must be defined in the plans of the project's SWIP and approved by DOT prior to use. In the case of roadside staging areas for paving equipment, a generic layout may be provided for multiple roadside identified locations. Some things to consider when picking staging area locations on your site is if there is enough space to store all of your equipment for the project. Is there any existing vegetation that will need to be protected? Are there any inlets downslope of the designated staging area that need to be protected? Staging areas can be a significant point source for pollution, so BMPs are necessary to ensure no contaminated stormwater exits the site. Once the SWIP is reviewed and all BMP devices are on the plan, it is time for the independent inspector to schedule an inspection with DOT. The initial independent inspection should occur after a pre-con inspection is conducted by DOT or the construction manager. A copy of this inspection report and signed SWIP review checklist will need to be provided to the independent inspector prior to the initial third-party inspection. The pre-con inspection should verify all BMP devices are properly installed according to plan and manufacturer specifications. If any deficiencies are identified during the pre-con, corrective action should be taken prior to the initial third-party inspection. Once the third-party inspector has reviewed all issued permits and the pre-con inspection report, it is time to conduct the initial inspection. The main areas to focus on when inspecting DOT construction projects throughout the life of the project is their staging areas, disturbed areas, any active erosion and sediment control devices on site, areas where there is sediment buildup, discharge points indicated on the outfall map, locations where stabilization measures have been initiated, and areas where stormwater typically seems to flow. Before heading out to conduct the inspection, here are some pre-inspection tips for the project inspectors responsible for conducting stormwater inspections and reporting corrective actions. Prior to the scheduled third-party inspection, it is recommended to conduct your own BMP inspection to fix any of the simple deficiencies identified and clean up the project site before the third-party inspection. This should minimize the amount of deficiencies identified during the third-party inspection and hopefully decrease the amount of corrective action needed to be taken. Maintenance is the key to a good BMP. It is recommended to walk the site on a daily basis and provide maintenance to BMP devices as needed. This will extend the life of the BMP and increase its effectiveness over time. We also recommend the contractor to bring a repair crew on the inspection to correct any deficiencies during the inspection. Most deficiencies identified on third-party inspections are minor and require a minimal amount of time to correct. If the deficiencies can be corrected during the inspection, this will downgrade the level of deficiency identified by the third-party inspector. Good intentions go a long way with the independent inspectors. They are not out there to scold you, but to work with you to ensure that BMP devices are in place to prevent pollutants from leaving the site and ultimately posing a risk to our natural resources. Now that we went over some tips for the project contractor and inspectors to prepare for independent stormwater inspections, here are some inspection tips for independent inspectors as they make their way out to the site. Be upbeat and prepared for the inspection by ensuring all necessary documents are approved and signed. Create a process to prepare and conduct independent inspections. This will save you time in the long run and help you remain consistent throughout the project. It is important to show up to the scheduled inspection on time, as we do not want to waste the contractor or project engineer's valuable time. When conducting the inspection, take photos and notes to document findings on the project site. It is recommended to point out erosion and sediment control devices that are in good working order, as well as BMP devices that need corrective action taken. Following the inspection, the third-party inspector shall conduct a debrief meeting with all who attended the inspection to go over deficiencies identified and suspense dates for corrective actions. As stated earlier, the independent inspector is on site to be of assistance and be a resource to your project team to help you stay in compliance with permit regulations and rules. It is best to be honest and upfront with the project team to minimize miscommunication and provide the most effective solution on DOT construction sites. Now, our HDOT third-party inspectors will take us out to some of the active construction projects on Maui and Oahu to show what common BMP devices we currently see being used on sites. In a straightforward resurfacing project, we will commonly see this entire list of BMP devices being used on a daily basis. Here's an inspector who is out on an active resurfacing project to talk about the proper BMP devices installed at the project staging areas and some tips on how to maintain them.
For resurfacing projects, we typically see staging areas being used to house paving equipment and vehicles. These staging areas normally consist of drip protection in the form of geotextile filter fabric on top of plastic, and these staging areas are surrounded with perimeter controls.
Drip protection is a widely used BMP device generally found in project staging areas. The intent of this BMP is to prevent spills and leaks from construction materials and vehicles from penetrating the ground and getting into the soil, as well as leaking out into the roadway and ultimately into a drainage system or open water body.
One common issue we see with staging area drip protection is when vehicles are moving and entering the site, they move the staging area drip protection out of position or the drip protection gets damaged. You can see an example of this here with the drip protection exposing the ground. We want to make sure that when this happens that we repair or replace the drip protection or move it back into position.
Other examples of inadequate drip protection shows no plastic installed under the geotextile fabric, causing the oil to soak through to the bare ground. In the picture on the right, you will see the drip pan used had reached capacity and the oil spill spread across the staging area. Luckily, they had a drip pad also installed, which was able to absorb all of the oil that leaked from the equipment.
One way to help prevent the damage and movement of the staging area drip protection is to use stakes to anchor the drip protection into the ground. So as we can see here, you can just stake it into here and you want to make sure that the stakes are used at regular intervals. For staging areas that get heavy rainfall or have grounds that can be easily saturated, geoterra grids and similar devices can be used to help stabilize the area and prevent vehicles from sinking into the ground. These devices can be installed either under or over the drip protection per manufacturer specifications. And they should also be cleaned regularly to prevent sediment buildup within the device.
Vehicles and equipment being stored in the staging area should be entirely on the drip pad and not resting on perimeter control devices. If the project staging area is not on level ground, it is recommended to create a berm under the plastic on the downslope side to catch any liquids or waste from leaving the area. Drip pads are required due to inadequate effectiveness of drip pans, which are too small to capture any amount of liquid larger than a minor leak or spill. As you can see in the picture, when a drip pad is not installed under stored construction equipment, the asphalt waste and other hazardous material will end up falling on bare ground.
Another common issue with staging area drip protection is when waste asphalt gets knocked off the paving equipment and vehicles onto the drip protection. So when this happens, you want to make sure that the waste asphalt gets removed accordingly. If the waste asphalt is going to be stockpiled on the drip protection, it needs to be stored on a layer of impermeable material like plastic, surrounded with perimeter controls, and covered with plastic. The drip protection cannot be used as the layer of impermeable material because BMPs cannot be doubled up.
Asphalt waste is typically found on resurfacing projects requiring paving operations. These pictures are examples of poor management of asphalt waste. Waste should not be left on bare ground or in roadways to prevent it from being picked up during a storm event and discharged into storm drains or open water bodies. If the contractor plans to store asphalt waste on site, the material should be placed on 10 mil plastic sheeting or similar impermeable material and covered with perimeter control installed around the base of the pile. Any asphalt waste that is near or enters the storm drain must be removed immediately, but no later than the end of the workday. For paving operations, it is common for contractors to phase the installation and removal of BMP devices each workday. If this process is to be used, ensure that a note is included in the BMP plan. Inlet protection are devices installed at storm drain inlets that detain large objects and sediment-laden runoff prior to entering the storm drain system. These devices are often the last treatment measure, so a layered BMP approach is crucial to mitigating sediment-laden runoff from entering the storm drainage system. All storm drain inlets, both within the project limits and beyond the project limits, that may intercept sediment-laden runoff from the construction site shall be protected prior to commencing land-disturbing activity. Install inlet protection devices prior to upgradient land-disturbing activity. They are intended to cause ponding, which is necessary to allow the sediment to settle. The storm drain inlet must not be completely blocked when public safety is of concern or the directive from HDOT to pull inlet protection before a forecasted storm.
All inlets on the project site needs to be documented on the SWIP plan. Here's an example of inlet protection. We have gravel bags on both ends and at the overlaps, and they extend 1 foot past the openings on both ends.
Common deficiencies found with inlet protection devices are that they are missing or have not been installed according to their erosion and sediment control plan. They may also be falling into the insert due to improper installation or lack of maintenance. Torn or ripped BMP devices at inlet inserts are also minor deficiencies commonly called out by third-party inspectors. Here are a few examples of BMP devices installed at inlet inserts and graded drop inlets. It is important to install inlet protection according to manufacturer specifications. In this example, the curb inlet dam did not fully block the inlet insert, thus leaving a gap at the end of the inlet, which will allow sediment and pollutants from the roadway to enter the drain during a rain event. In the next example, at the graded drop inlet, you will see the fabric is overwhelmed with sediment and falling into the drain. It is important to note that many of the inlet frames we see on construction sites do not hold the fabric up due to the space between the concrete box and steel grate. Contractors generally use a piece of wood or other sort of spacer to wedge the fabric to the side of the box. The fabric used under the grate should extend a minimum of 6 inches past the grate on all sides to prevent the fabric from falling in when sediment is accumulated on the device. Perimeter controls on construction projects is a temporary best management practice for sediment control, used along the site perimeter around temporary stockpiles, at the toe of a slope and downslope of exposed areas. Perimeter controls keep sediment and potential pollutants contained, preventing them from entering our storm drains and negatively affecting streams in the ocean. Perimeter sediment controls shall be installed and made operational prior to conducting earth-disturbing activities in any given portion of the site that will receive stormwater from earth-disturbing activities. The two main perimeter control devices we find on HDOT construction projects are filter socks and silt fences. A vegetated buffer can also be considered perimeter control and be layered with a filter sock or silt fence for maximum effectiveness. Choosing the proper BMP to use on your project is the key to prevent potential pollutants from leaving the site. Some factors to consider when deciding what BMP to use consist of drainage area, type of water flow observed, along with installation and maintenance requirements. The purpose of perimeter control is to keep everything within the project limits.
All projects has to have perimeter control surrounding the whole project site to prevent anything from leaving the project site.
If the contractor decides to use compost filter socks for the project's perimeter control, the orientation of the overlap is important to keep in mind. The construction BMP manual requires that filter socks must be overlapped a minimum of 6 inches, with the upslope sock inside the lower. Perimeter control used for stockpiles must be 1 to 2 feet from the base of the pile. The perimeter control device used for the stockpile must be separate from the project's perimeter control device or other BMP devices installed.
A common deficiency you would see on a perimeter control would be torn and the organic matter is coming out.
Compost filter socks consist of a mesh tube filled with compost material. When the mesh is torn or ripped due to wear and tear, the organic material in the sock will fall out. Instead of replacing the entire filter sock, we recommend using zip ties, not duct tape, to repair the inner meshing. This is an effective maintenance practice that will save your project money in the long run. Sanitary waste management practices and procedures are implemented to reduce or prevent the discharge of sanitary wastes from construction sites into the storm drain system or adjacent water bodies. The main things to think about is location of the sanitary facilities and how they are secured. Portable toilets can be secured down from tipping or being knocked over with the use of straps, rebar stakes, or similar devices.
Here we have a sanitary waste management, otherwise known as a portable toilet. One of the things I look for is it has to be secured, prevent it from tipping over, and I recommend a secondary containment.
If one tips over or a spill occurs, immediately contain the contents and determine if a discharge has occurred. The location of where these sanitary facilities are placed is also very important. We want to avoid placing sanitary facilities directly over a drainage structure or near an open water body. The contractor should schedule regular waste collection at least once a week or as required. All projects are required to stabilize exposed portions of the site in accordance with permit regulations and requirements. Soil stabilization measures shall be immediately initiated whenever earth-disturbing activities have permanently or temporarily ceased on the site. Permanently ceased is defined as clearing and excavation activities within any area of the construction site will not include permanent structures and has been deemed completed. Earth-disturbing activities have temporarily ceased when clearing, grading, and excavation activities within any area of the site will not resume for a period of 14 or more calendar days, but such activities will resume in the future. Common best management practices to stabilize disturbed areas consist of installing geotextile erosion control matting, riprap along stream banks, hydromulching, and seeding with consistent watering. Let's go out to some active construction sites with our inspectors to see how these projects are stabilizing their disturbed areas and working through their final punch list items.
So on this job site, we came across a hillside that is bare and unprotected. So it is recommended that the hillside be equipped with some type of BMPs. So whether it be hydro mulching on the hillside or a straw wattles filter sock on the toe end of the hillside. And also we have perimeter control at the base or the bottom portion of the job site. We also want to protect the top portion of the job site and don't have any runoff getting towards the bottom.
We're out here on the Makaha Replacement Bridge project, currently about to close at the end of this year. Wanted to show you some of the things they're doing to close up the project. One example here is the riprap along the stream banks to protect from any erosion or scouring that may occur. Also what they did was install in the back of this hill some erosion control matting, and we'll go over there and show you what that looks like. Okay, here we are on the north side of the Makaha Bridge replaced bridges. You can see what they did is they went from riprap to an erosion control mat. Some important things to think about when installing these mats is to key in the top at the top of the slope with a 6 by 6 inch trench and backfill it. This will keep it nice and tight to prevent it from sliding down the slope. Also, once the slope is graded, what you want to do is ensure that it has firm contact across the entire slope. This will prevent any rilling or gulling underneath the matting. They tied the bottom in to ensure that it's tight. And then what they did is installed some irrigation systems on the top and bottom of the slope to improve vegetation growth and to stabilize the area.
HAR 1155 Appendix C requires all sites that use seed or planted vegetation to stabilize the area. Shall provide established uniform vegetation which provides 70% or more of the density of coverage that was there prior to commencing earth-disturbing activities. Let's head out to the site, listen to some tips from our inspector on how to know that an area is deemed stabilized.
One tip to ensure you know what vegetation looked like prior to disturbance is to take a photo prior to starting work. This can help you determine what 70% revegetation looks like. As you can see in this area, certain portions of it have been vegetatively stabilized, but this portion right here still has some bare spots. Additional seeding and watering may be needed if the area is not growing properly. Once the area is revegetated and the project engineer approves the revegetation, temporary perimeter controls and inlet protection may be removed.